The massive silver ship hung in space like a metal moon. Inside its cold halls, alien beings from across the galaxy sat around a glowing table. These were the rulers of the Galactic Empire, and they had a problem. Emperor Zexthol stood 12 feet tall with blue skin and 4 arms. His red eyes glowed as he spoke to the council. "We have found another world," he said in his deep voice. "A small blue planet called Earth." The other aliens nodded. Some had tentacles instead of arms. Others had scales or fur. But they all shared one thing: they believed they owned the galaxy. "What do we know about these humans?" asked General Vector, a creature that looked like a giant insect. "They are young and weak," replied Admiral Kethver. His green skin was covered in scars from many battles. "They have only just learned to travel between stars. Their ships are slow and their weapons are simple." Emperor Zexthil walked to a large window. Outside, thousands of Imperial warships floated in perfect lines. Each ship was bigger than a city and carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. But they refused to bow, the Emperor said. "When our scouts visited their world, the humans sent them away. They said Earth belongs to humans only." The council began to talk loudly. Some aliens hissed. Others roared. They were not used to being told no. "This cannot stand," said General Vector. "If one species refuses to obey, others might follow. Soon the whole empire could fall apart." "Admiral," Kethver smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Then we must make an example of them. Show the galaxy what happens when you say no to the Empire." Far away on Earth, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the Liberty. He was a tall man with brown hair and tired eyes. He had been patrolling the edge of Earth's solar system for 3 months, watching for any sign of the aliens who had visited Earth. "Captain," called out Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her station, "we're getting a message. It's coming from outside the solar system." Jake walked over to the main screen. "Put it through." The screen flickered, then showed Emperor Zexthil's face. The alien's red eyes seemed to look right through Jake. "Humans of Earth," the Emperor began. "I am Zexthil, ruler of the Galactic Empire. For 1,000 years, we have brought order to the galaxy. Every intelligent species serves the Empire." Jake felt his hands shake as he listened. The Emperor's voice was cold and hard. "You have 7 of your days to surrender," Zexthil continued. "Open your world to Imperial rule. Your leaders will step down. Your people will serve. Your ships will be destroyed." The Emperor leaned forward. "If you refuse, we will erase your species from existence. Every human city will burn. Every human life will end. You will be forgotten." The message ended. The bridge of the Liberty was silent. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Brooks, "what do we do?" Before Jake could answer, another voice came over the radio. "All ships. This is Admiral Lisa Carter. Return to Earth immediately. We have a situation." 2 hours later, Jake sat in a room deep under the Pentagon. Around the table were the most important people on Earth. Admiral Carter, a woman with gray hair and sharp blue eyes, led the meeting. President Sam Rodriguez looked pale as he studied reports on his tablet. "The alien fleet is already moving," Admiral Carter said. "Our deep space sensors show over 10,000 ships heading toward Earth. They'll be here in 6 days. General Bob Hayes, head of the Army, shook his head. "We have maybe 200 ships in our entire fleet. Most of them are cargo vessels or science ships. We can't fight this." "Maybe we should surrender," said Secretary of State Mary Collins. "If we give them what they want, some humans might survive." "No," said President Rodriguez firmly. Read the reports from other worlds the Empire has conquered. They don't just rule. They break people's spirits. They turn entire species into slaves." Admiral Carter stood up. There might be another way. She walked to a computer and typed in a long code. The screen showed a top-secret file marked Phoenix Initiative. For the past 10 years, we've known this day would come, she said. Our long-range sensors detected the Empire's expansion pattern. We calculated it would reach Earth eventually. Jake leaned forward. What's the Phoenix Initiative? A project so secret that only 50 people on Earth know about it, Admiral Carter replied. We've been preparing for this war since before most of you knew aliens existed. She pressed another button. New images appeared on the screen. Ships unlike anything Jake had ever seen. They were sleek and deadly looking, with strange blue engines and weapons that seemed to glow. We've been building a hidden fleet, Admiral, Carter said. 300 ships using technology we've developed in secret. We've had help from friendly alien species who escaped from the Empire years ago. President Rodriguez stared at the images. Why wasn't I told about this? Because if the Empire learned we were preparing, they would have attacked years ago when we were weaker, Admiral Carter explained. The Phoenix Initiative was designed to make the Empire think we're helpless right up until the moment we strike. Back, General Hayes studied the ship designs. These don't look like anything in our current fleet. They're not, Admiral Carter said. They're faster, stronger, and smarter than anything the Empire has. More importantly, they're designed to fight the way humans fight, not the way aliens expect us to fight. Jake felt a spark of hope. Where are these ships? Admiral Carter smiled for the first time since the meeting began. Hidden in places the Empire would never think to look. Underground shipyards, asteroid bases, even inside some of our larger space stations. She turned to face the room. The Empire thinks they're dealing with a primitive species that will either surrender or die. Quickly. They're about to learn that humans don't do either of those things very well. President Rodriguez stood up. What's our next move? We let them come, Admiral Carter said. We let them think they're winning right up until the moment we show them what humans are really capable of. Outside, the sun was setting over Washington. In space, the Imperial fleet continued its journey toward Earth, confident in their overwhelming power. But hidden in the darkness, humanity's secret weapons waited. War for Earth's freedom was about to begin. The helicopter flew low over the Rocky Mountains as the sun came up. Inside, President Rodriguez gripped his seat as they headed toward a place that did not exist on any map. Admiral Carter sat across from him, checking her watch every few minutes. How long have you known about this place? The president asked. 15 years, Admiral Carter replied. I helped design it. The helicopter landed on what looked like empty ground. But as they stepped out, a section of rock slid away to show a metal platform. They rode it down into the mountain for what felt like forever. When the platform finally stopped, President Rodriguez could not believe his eyes. They stood in a massive underground space that stretched as far as he could see. Hundreds of workers in white suits moved around giant machines. But what made him gasp were the ships. Dozens of sleek warships hung from the ceiling like sleeping giants. Each one was the size of a city block, with smooth metal skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. Strange blue engines glowed softly at their backs. Welcome to Facility 7, said a voice behind them. They turned to see a man in his 40s, with short black hair and confident eyes. He wore the uniform of a Navy commander. Commander Ryan Brooks, Admiral Carter said. He runs this place. Ryan shook the president's hand. Sorry for all the secrecy, sir. But if the Empire had learned about this, we'd all be dead already. They walked along a metal bridge that ran between the ships. Workers were loading weapons and supplies into the vessels. Everything moved with purpose and speed. How many ships do we have? President Rodriguez asked. 312, Ryan replied. All of them ready for combat. We've been building them for 10 years, using materials from asteroid mines the Empire doesn't know about. Admiral Carter pointed to the nearest ship, the Defiance. Captain Kate Sullivan will command her. She's one of our best pilots. The president looked up at the massive vessel. What makes these ships special? A woman's voice answered from behind. Them. They think like humans do. Dr. Amy Walsh was a small woman with red hair and green eyes. She wore a lab coat covered in computer screens and tools. I designed their computer systems, she explained as they walked. Most alien ships use logical, predictable patterns. They follow rules, but humans don't fight by rules. She led them to a control room where dozens of screens showed technical details about the ships. The president tried to understand the numbers, but they meant nothing to him. Our ships can change their tactics in the middle of a battle, Dr. Walsh continued. They learn from what the enemy does and adapt. The Empire has never faced anything like this. Ryan pointed to another screen. We also have new weapons. Instead of energy beams like most space navies use, we fire solid projectiles at incredible speeds. Metal rods accelerated to near light speed. Why metal rods? The president asked. Because alien shields are designed to stop energy weapons, Dr. Walsh explained. They're not prepared for something that simply punches through them. Admiral Carter led them to another section of the facility. Here, smaller ships were being prepared for launch. They looked fast and deadly, with sharp angles and dark metal. Fighter craft, she said, designed for hit-and-run attacks. They can appear anywhere in the solar system within minutes, thanks to our new engines. Dr. Walsh smiled. Quantum fold drives. We can essentially teleport across space. No alien technology can match that speed. They entered another room where a tall man with gray hair was studying battle plans on a large table. Captain Ben Taylor looked up as they approached. Mr. President, he said with a nod, I'll be commanding the flagship Valkyrie. President Rodriguez looked at the battle plans. They showed the solar system with hundreds of ships marked in different colors. What's our strategy? He asked. Captain Taylor pointed to Earth. The Empire will expect us to defend our home world directly. Instead, we're going to let them think they're winning while we attack their weak points. He moved his finger to show different positions around the solar system. We hit their supply ships first, then their communication vessels. We make them blind and hungry before we face their main fleet. Admiral Carter added, We've learned from studying other species that fought the Empire. They all made the same mistake. They tried to match imperial power with their own strength. That's impossible. So we don't fight fair? The president asked. Exactly, Captain Taylor said. We fight smart. We use every advantage we have. Dr. Walsh activated another screen that showed strange images and sounds. We've also developed psychological warfare systems. We know what scares different alien species. Fear can be more powerful than any weapon. They walked through more sections of the facility. Engineers showed them new armor that could repair itself. Scientists demonstrated communication systems that the Empire could not intercept. Pilots practiced in simulators that felt more real than real life. How many people know about this? President Rodriguez asked. About 1,000 work in all our hidden facilities, Ryan replied. Each person was carefully chosen and tested. Their families think they work for regular government agencies. Admiral Carter checked her watch again. We need to see the crown jewel. They took an elevator deeper into the mountain. When the doors opened, they stepped into a chamber that held a single massive ship. This one was different from the others. Larger, more powerful, with weapons that hummed with energy. The Valkyrie, Captain Taylor said with pride. She be our command ship, fast enough to escape any trap, strong enough to fight any enemy. President Rodriguez walked around the ship's base. How long until you can launch? All ships are ready now, Ryan replied. We've been waiting for your order, sir. The president looked around at all the people working to save Earth. Engineers, pilots, scientists, soldiers, all of them risking everything for a chance to fight back. What are our real chances? He asked quietly. Admiral Carter was quiet for a moment. Honestly, if we fight the way they expect, we lose. But if we fight the way only humans can fight, we might surprise them. Dr. Walsh added, the Empire has conquered hundreds of species, but they've never fought humans before. They don't understand what we're capable of when we're desperate. Captain Taylor looked up at the Valkyrie. Every person in this facility volunteered to be here. We all knew this day would come. We're ready. President Rodriguez felt the weight of the decision on his shoulders. In a few days, the Imperial fleet would arrive. Earth's future depended on ships and people that the world didn't know existed. Admiral Carter, he said finally, begin the Phoenix Initiative. Show the Empire what happens when they threaten humanity. As alarms began to sound throughout the facility, hundreds of workers moved to their final preparations. The hidden fleet was about to reveal itself to the galaxy dot far above them. Imperial ships continued their approach to Earth, confident that they faced a weak and helpless enemy. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for 10 years. The real war was about to begin. 7 days had passed since the Empire's ultimatum. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Kethfer looked at the blue world growing larger on his screens. Earth hung in space like a jewel, unprotected and helpless. Status report, Kethfer ordered. All 10,000 ships are in position, replied his tactical officer. The human fleet appears to be minimal. We detect less than 50 ships defending their world. Kethfer smiled with satisfaction. 50 ships against 10,000. This will be over quickly. He opened a communication channel to his fleet. All vessels, begin the cleansing. Start with their major population centers. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Empire. On Earth, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching the massive alien fleet approach. His hands were steady now, though his heart raced. Around him, his crew prepared for what might be their final battle. Captain, Lieutenant Brooks called out. Admiral Carter is on the line. Jake pressed the communication button. Admiral, the Imperial fleet is moving into attack position. I see them, Jake. Remember, stick to the plan. Let them think they're winning. Jake looked at the overwhelming number of enemy ships on his screen. Admiral, there are so many of them. Trust me, Captain. In about 5 minutes, those numbers won't matter as much as they think. Jake nodded and turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. All ships hold position. Wait for my signal. On the Imperial flagship, Admiral Kethvar watched his ships move toward Earth like a metal storm. In his long career, he had conquered dozens of worlds. It was always the same: fear, surrender, or quick destruction. Sir, his communications officer reported, the humans are broadcasting a message. Put it through, Kethvar ordered, expecting to hear pleas for mercy. Instead, Jake's voice came through the speakers, calm and clear. Imperial Fleet, this is Captain Morrison of Earth Defense. You have entered our space without permission. Leave now, or face the consequences. Kethvar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through his bridge. Consequences? From 50 primitive ships, he gave the order. Begin bombardment. The first Imperial weapons fired toward Earth's major cities. But before they could reach their targets, something impossible happened. A massive human ship appeared directly in front of the Imperial command vessel. It had come from nowhere, moving faster than anything in Kethvar's fleet could travel. Captain, Kate Sullivan commanded the Defiance with ice in her veins. "Target their command ship's shield generators," she ordered. "Fire all kinetic batteries." Metal rods shot from the Defiance at incredible speed. They passed through the Imperial shields like they were made of paper and tore into the alien ships. Hull. Explosions lit up space as the command vessel's weapon systems exploded. Impossible. Kethfer roared as his ship shook around him. How did they get so close? More human ships appeared throughout the Imperial fleet. They seemed to teleport from nowhere, strike hard, then vanish before the aliens could respond. The Empire's perfect formation began to break apart as captains tried to track enemies that moved like ghosts. Captain Ryan Brooks led a squadron of human fighters in their first real combat. "Remember your training," he called to his pilots over the radio. "Hit and run. Never stay in one place long enough for them to target you." The human fighters used their quantum fold drives to appear behind Imperial ships, fire devastating attacks, then disappear before return fire could reach them. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could be everywhere and nowhere at once. On Earth, Dr. Walsh activated her psychological warfare systems. Every Imperial ship suddenly received broadcasts designed to terrify alien minds. Images of human warriors throughout history, Vikings, samurai, soldiers, filled their screens along with sounds of battle cries and war drums. "What is this?" demanded an Imperial captain as his crew began to panic. The broadcasts were more than just scary pictures. Dr. Walsh had studied alien psychology for years. She knew exactly what each species feared most. For some, it was the dark. For others, it was loud noises or flashing lights. The human ships broadcast each alien's worst nightmare directly into their minds. Admiral Kethvar tried to restore order to his fleet, but nothing was going as planned. His ships were designed to fight enemies that followed predictable patterns. But humans attacked from impossible angles, used weapons that shouldn't work, and seemed to have no fear of death. "All ships fall back to defensive formation," he ordered. But Captain Taylor on the Valkyrie had anticipated this move. Tactical, fire quantum torpedoes at their communication array. New weapons that the Empire had never seen before streaked across space. When they hit the Imperial communication ship, it didn't just explode. It seemed to fold in on itself and disappear. "We've lost fleet communications," reported Kethver's tactical officer. Without the ability to coordinate, the Imperial fleet began to act like 10,000 separate ships instead of one united force. Human captains took advantage of this immediately. Captain Sullivan brought the Defiance into close combat with 3 Imperial cruisers. Instead of exchanging fire at long range like civilized species, she ordered ramming speed. "She's going to collide with us," screamed an Imperial captain as the human ship charged directly at his vessel. At the last second, the Defiance used its quantum drive to teleport to the side and fire point-blank into the Imperial ship's engines. The alien vessel spun out of control and crashed into one of its own allies. The battle was unlike anything the Empire had ever experienced. Human ships worked together without needing constant orders. They adapted their tactics as the fight progressed. Most terrifying of all, they seemed willing to sacrifice themselves to damage Imperial forces. "Sir," reported Kethver's tactical officer, "we've lost over 300 ships. Human losses are minimal." Kethver could not believe what he was hearing. How is that possible? On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the battle from her command center. "Phase 2, she ordered. "Begin the liberation broadcasts." Dr. Walsh activated another system. Every Imperial ship suddenly received new messages. Not threats this time, but something worse from the Empire's perspective. They began broadcasting the real history of Imperial conquest to every enslaved species in the galaxy. For the first time, slaves on Imperial worlds learned that the Empire had not always been invincible. They heard about other species that had fought back. More importantly, they learned that humans were winning their first battle against Imperial forces. On distant worlds, alien slaves began to whisper among themselves. If humans could fight the Empire, perhaps they could too. Captain Jake Morrison finally brought the Liberty into the battle. All ships converge on the Imperial flagship. Time to end this. The human fleet attacked Kethvar's ship from all directions at once. The admiral tried to fight back, but his vessel was already damaged from the first surprise attack. "Sir, we must retreat," his tactical officer urged. For the first time in his career, Admiral Kethvar gave an order he never thought he would speak. "All ships withdraw from this system." But Captain Taylor wasn't finished. "Pursuit course. Don't let them escape to warn the Empire." The human fleet chased the retreating Imperial forces to the edge of the solar system. Only a few hundred Imperial ships escaped. The rest were either destroyed or captured. As the battle ended, Jake stood on his bridge, looking at the debris field that had once been an unstoppable Imperial fleet. His communication system crackled with reports from other human ships. "Defiance. Here, we're damaged but operational. Valkyrie reporting. All primary systems functional. This is Brooks. My fighter squadron is ready for the next mission." Admiral Carter's voice came over the fleet channel. "Outstanding work, everyone. But this is just the beginning. The Empire will send more ships." Captain Sullivan smiled as she looked at her battle-damaged ship. "Let them come. We'll be ready." Far away on Vorthik Prime, Emperor Zexthul received the news of the defeat. For the first time in 1,000 years, an Imperial fleet had been destroyed by a primitive species. "Impossible," he whispered, staring at the reports. But on worlds throughout the galaxy, the impossible was becoming reality. Humans had shown that the Empire could be beaten. The age of Imperial dominance was beginning to end. 3 weeks after the first battle, Admiral Kethvar sat in his rebuilt command center on the Imperial fortress world of Nexus 7. The defeat at Earth had cost him most of his fleet, but worse, it had cost him his reputation. Reports of the human victory were spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. "Status of reinforcements?" he asked his new tactical officer. 5,000 fresh ships have arrived from the core worlds," came the reply. "Emperor Zexthul has also sent the second fleet to assist us." Kethvar nodded grimly. 15,000 ships total. Even these unpredictable humans cannot stand against such numbers. But Admiral Kethvar did not know that human ships were already watching his every move. Hidden in the asteroid fields around Nexus 7, Captain Alex Johnson commanded a stealth reconnaissance vessel called the Shadow. "Command, this is Johnson," he whispered into his radio. "The Imperial fleet is larger than expected. They're planning something big." Back on Earth, Admiral Carter studied the intelligence reports in her war room. The walls were covered with maps of Imperial space showing supply routes, communication networks, and fleet movements. "They're massing for a major assault," she said to her staff. "But they're making the same mistake as before. They think this is a conventional war." Captain Taylor, now promoted to Admiral after his victory at Earth, leaned over the tactical display. "What's our next move?" Dr. Walsh activated a holographic map of the local galaxy. Red lines showed Imperial supply routes connecting hundreds of worlds. Operation Prometheus. "We cut off their supplies and communications before they can reach Earth." Admiral Carter turned to address the room full of ship captains and military leaders. "The Empire rules through fear and overwhelming force. But they have a weakness. They depend on a complex network to maintain control." She pointed to key locations on the map. "If we destroy their supply depots and communication relays, their fleets become isolated and confused. Captain Kate Sullivan, her arm still in a sling from the first battle, studied the plan. That means dividing our forces. We'll be outnumbered in every engagement. Which is why we're not going to fight fair. Admiral Carter replied with a smile. Dr. Walsh brought up new technical displays. I've been working on something special. A computer virus designed specifically for Imperial systems. The screen showed complex code that seemed to pulse and move like a living thing. Their ships all use the same basic computer architecture. This virus will spread through their networks and turn their own systems against them. Admiral Taylor raised an eyebrow. What exactly will it do? Make their ships think other Imperial vessels are enemies, Dr. Walsh explained. It exploits their over-reliance on automated systems. When it activates, Imperial fleets will start firing on each other. 2 days later, the human fleet split into small task forces and scattered across Imperial space. Each group had a specific target: supply depots, communication stations, or isolated Imperial patrols. Commander Rachel Stone led her team to an Imperial supply base orbiting a gas giant. The base was massive, built into a captured asteroid and defended by 50 warships. Remember, we're not here to fight, she told her crew as their ship approached invisibly using advanced stealth technology. We're here to send a message. Stone's ship, the Phantom, slipped past the Imperial defenses like smoke. Using teleportation technology, a small team of humans appeared inside the supply base itself. The Imperial guards had never seen humans before. The boarders moved through the station's corridors with deadly efficiency, using close combat skills that no alien military had ever developed. What are these creatures? An Imperial officer gasped as human soldiers systematically captured key sections of the base. Within an hour, Commander Stone's team had taken control of the station's main computer. Instead of destroying the base, they did something far more damaging. They uploaded Dr. Walsh's virus into the Imperial network. Virus deployed, Stone reported. Beginning Phase 2. The humans planted charges throughout the supply depot, but these weren't ordinary explosives. When they detonated, they created a spectacular light show visible from several star systems. The message was clear: humans could strike anywhere. Similar operations were happening across Imperial space. Captain Johnson's team destroyed a major communication relay that connected 50 Imperial worlds. Another human force captured an entire Imperial patrol fleet by using the virus to turn their ships against each other. But the most important discovery came from Captain Sullivan's mission to the Imperial prison world of Karak Prime. Admiral Carter, you need to see this. Sullivan's voice crackled over the long-range communicator. The screen showed thousands of beings from dozens of different species, all working in massive industrial complexes under Imperial guard. But these weren't ordinary prisoners. They're not destroying conquered species, Sullivan reported. They're enslaving them. Every world the Empire has cleansed is actually a slave labor camp. Admiral Carter felt her blood run cold. How many worlds? Hundreds, Sullivan replied. Maybe thousands. The Empire has been using slave labor for centuries to build their fleets and weapons. Dr. Walsh immediately began working on a new project. If we can communicate with these enslaved populations, we might be able to coordinate uprisings across Imperial space. She modified their communication systems to broadcast messages in hundreds of alien languages. The content was simple, but powerful. Humans were fighting the Empire and winning. The response was immediate and overwhelming. On world after world, enslaved species began to rebel against their Imperial masters. They sabotaged factories, attacked guard posts, and disrupted supply lines. Admiral Kethvar watched his carefully planned offensive fall apart as reports poured in from across Imperial space. Supply depots were exploding. Communication networks were failing. Worse, his own ships were beginning to act strangely. "Sir, the 3rd Squadron is requesting permission to engage the 7th Squadron," reported his confused tactical officer. "Why? Would they want to fight each other?" Kethver demanded before anyone could answer. Warning alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial fleet. On dozens of ships, computer systems suddenly identified nearby Imperial vessels as hostile targets and began firing automatically. "It's the humans!" Kethver roared as he watched his fleet tear itself apart. "They've infected our computers somehow." On Earth, Dr. Walsh watched the results of her virus with satisfaction. Their automated systems are turning against them. The more they depend on technology, the more vulnerable they become. Admiral Carter opened a communication channel to all human forces. "Phase 3 is a go. Begin liberation operations." Captain Taylor led the main human fleet to Karak Prime, where Captain Sullivan had discovered the slave camps. Instead of attacking the Imperial defenses directly, they broadcast a message to every enslaved being on the planet. "People of Karak Prime, this is Admiral Taylor of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your oppressors are no longer invincible. Rise up, and we will fight beside you." The response was a planet-wide revolution. Millions of enslaved beings attacked their guards simultaneously. Imperial forces, already confused by the computer virus, found themselves fighting rebels in every city and factory. Human ships provided air support for the uprising, but more importantly, they provided hope. For the first time in centuries, enslaved species believed they could win their freedom. Similar scenes played out across dozens of Imperial worlds. The virus continued spreading through Imperial networks, causing their fleets to attack each other. Communication breakdowns left Imperial commanders isolated and confused. Emperor Zexthul sat on his throne on Vorthek Prime, receiving reports of disaster after disaster. His empire, which had ruled the galaxy for 1,000 years, was collapsing, faster than he could comprehend. "How many worlds are in rebellion?" he asked his advisors. "Over 200, Your Majesty," came the terrified reply. "The humans seem to be coordinating uprisings across our entire territory." The Emperor's 4 arms clenched into fists. "This cannot be happening. A primitive species cannot destroy an empire." But across the galaxy, that's exactly what was happening. Humans had turned the Empire's greatest strength, its vast size and complex organization, into its greatest weakness. Admiral Carter stood in her command center, watching reports flow in from across Imperial space. Red markers showing Imperial control were changing to green as world after world declared independence. "Admiral," reported Captain Johnson from his reconnaissance ship, "Emperor Zexthul is mobilizing his personal fleet. A first Imperial fleet is leaving Vorthek Prime." Admiral Carter smiled grimly. "Then it's time for the final phase. Send a message to all human forces. We're going to the capital." The hunt was about to become a direct assault on the heart of the Empire itself. Emperor Zexthul stood on the bridge of his personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive ship was the size of a small moon and carried enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. Around it, the first Imperial fleet spread across. Space like a metal sea. 5,000 of the Empire's most powerful warships. "Status report," the Emperor commanded. "All rebel worlds have been cut off from communication," reported Admiral Lexver, his new fleet commander. The human ships appear to be regrouping near the outer rim. Emperor Zexthul's red eyes burned with rage. In just 2 months, these primitive humans had destroyed what took him centuries to build. Hundreds of worlds were in open rebellion. His fleets were fighting each other due to some kind of human computer virus. Most humiliating of all, his reputation as an invincible ruler was shattered. "Where are the humans now?" he demanded. "Our scouts report a large human fleet moving toward Imperial space." Admiral Nexfor replied. But they seem to be avoiding our main defenses. What the Imperial scouts could not see was the true scale of the human operation. Admiral Carter had assembled not just Earth's hidden fleet, but ships from dozens of recently liberated worlds. Former slaves who had learned human tactics were now fighting alongside their liberators. Captain Taylor commanded the Valkyrie at the head of the massive liberation fleet. A ship had been upgraded with new weapons and armor taken from captured Imperial vessels. But more importantly, it carried something that no Imperial ship possessed, the hope of free peoples. "Admiral," reported Captain Sullivan from the Defiance, "long-range sensors show the Emperor's fleet is positioned exactly where we expected." Admiral Carter studied the tactical display from her command ship, now called the Phoenix. The Emperor had made the same mistake as every Imperial commander. Before him, he was fighting the way he always fought, not the way humans fought. "He's protecting his capital world with overwhelming force," she said to her staff. "But he's forgotten that we don't fight battles we can't win." Dr. Walsh, now bearing the rank of commander, activated the fleet's secret weapon, Quantum Fold. Drives are ready for synchronized jump. We can put the entire fleet directly above Vorthik Prime in 30 seconds. The plan was simple in concept, but impossible for Imperial minds to comprehend. Instead of fighting through the Empire's defenses, the humans would simply appear inside them. "All ships," Admiral Carter announced to the fleet. "Remember what we're fighting for. Not just Earth's freedom, but the freedom of every enslaved species in the galaxy." Captain Alex Johnson, now commanding a captured Imperial cruiser renamed Liberty's Hope, spoke for many when he replied, "We're ready, Admiral. Let's finish this." The human fleet vanished from space in a flash of blue light. On Vorthik Prime, Emperor Zexthal was meeting with his remaining loyal governors when the impossible happened. Thousands of human ships appeared directly above his capital city, having somehow bypassed every defense the Empire possessed. "Alert!" screamed sirens throughout the Imperial Palace. "Enemy fleet in orbit. All defenses respond immediately." But Admiral Carter had planned for this too. As Imperial defense platforms turned their weapons toward the human fleet, Dr. Walsh activated the most devastating version of her computer virus yet created. Every automated defense system on Vorthik Prime suddenly identified the Imperial Palace as a hostile target. "The planetary defenses are firing on the capital," reported a panicked Imperial officer. Emperor Zexthal watched in horror as his own weapons destroyed government buildings and military installations. "How is this possible?" Admiral Taylor's voice came over every communication channel on the planet. "Emperor Zexthal, this is Admiral Taylor of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your empire ends today." The Emperor's forearms shook with rage. "You dare threaten me on my own world?" "I'm not threatening you," Taylor replied calmly. "I'm informing you. Your fleets are scattered, your worlds are in rebellion, and your capital is surrounded. Surrender now, and your people will be treated fairly." "Never!" Emperor Zexthal roared. "I am the master of the galaxy. No primitive species will dictate terms to me." He turned to Admiral Nexfer. "Bring the First Fleet here immediately. Destroy every human ship." But when the Imperial First Fleet arrived at Vorthik Prime, they found something they had never encountered before: a battle. They couldn't win through superior numbers. Captain Sullivan had positioned human ships throughout the planet's orbital space using hit-and-run tactics that made them nearly impossible to target. When Imperial ships tried to attack, they found themselves firing on their own capital city. Captain Johnson led boarding parties that used teleportation technology to appear inside Imperial ships. The aliens had never developed close quarters combat techniques to match human soldiers fighting in narrow corridors. "We've captured 3 Imperial cruisers," Johnson reported. "Their crews are surrendering as soon as they see us." The psychological impact was devastating. For 1,000 years, Imperial forces had been told they were invincible. Now they were being defeated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive animals. Dr. Walsh had prepared one final surprise. As the battle raged above Vorthik Prime, she activated broadcasts to every remaining Imperial world. People of the galaxy, her message began. The Empire's rule is ending. Your Emperor's own capital is under attack by the species he tried to exterminate. The broadcasts showed live images of Imperial ships being captured by humans. More importantly, they showed enslaved populations on dozens of worlds declaring their independence. The choice is yours, Dr. Walsh continued. Continue serving an empire that treats you as slaves, or join us in building a galaxy where all species are free. The response was immediate. On world after world, Imperial governors found themselves facing massive uprisings. Local populations, inspired by human courage, drove out their oppressors. Emperor Zexthal watched his empire crumble from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy, rebellions on hundreds of worlds, Imperial. Fleets defecting to the human side, communication networks failing as former slaves destroyed Imperial installations. Your Majesty, Admiral Nexver said quietly, perhaps we should consider surrender. No, the Emperor screamed. I will not be defeated by humans. He activated the Eternal Dominion's most powerful weapons. If I cannot rule the galaxy, then I will destroy it. But Captain Taylor had anticipated this final desperate act. The Valkyrie appeared directly in front of the Imperial flagship, its quantum drives allowing it to match the larger ship's movements perfectly. Commander Brooks. Taylor ordered, prepare boarding parties. Sir, that ship is too heavily defended, Brooks replied. Not for long, Taylor said with a grim smile. Dr. Walsh, activate Virus Protocol Omega. Every system on the Eternal Dominion suddenly began malfunctioning. Weapons turned offline. Shields flickered and died. Most importantly, the ship's internal defenses stopped recognizing Imperial personnel as friendly. Captain Brooks led human soldiers through corridors where Imperial guards were being attacked by their own security systems. The boarding party fought their way toward the bridge, encountering confused and demoralized enemies who seemed more terrified than aggressive. Emperor Zexthal made his final stand in his throne room, surrounded by his personal guard. When the humans broke through, he expected to die fighting. Instead, Captain Brooks simply pointed a weapon at him and said, Emperor Zexthal, you are under arrest for crimes against sentient life. The mighty ruler of the galaxy, who had conquered hundreds of worlds and enslaved billions of beings, surrendered without firing a shot. 3 days later, Admiral Carter stood in the ruins of the Imperial throne room. Representatives from dozens of liberated species had gathered to witness the formal end of the Empire. Emperor Zexthal, now a prisoner, sat in chains as the charges against him were read. Genocide, slavery, the destruction of entire civilizations. The list seemed endless. Do you have anything to say? Admiral Carter asked. The former emperor looked up with defeated eyes. How? How did a primitive species destroy my empire? Admiral Carter considered the question seriously. Because you never understood what you were fighting. You saw us as animals to be tamed or destroyed. But humans aren't just another species. We're the ones who refuse to kneel. Captain Taylor stepped forward. Representatives of the liberated worlds, we propose the formation of a galactic republic. A government based on freedom and cooperation, not domination. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been enemies under Imperial rule now stood together as equals. Former slaves became citizens. Military commanders became peacekeepers. Dr. Walsh established new communication networks that connected free worlds instead of controlling them. Captain Sullivan led exploration missions to find other enslaved populations. Captain Johnson organized defense fleets to protect against any remaining Imperial loyalists. As Admiral Carter looked out at the gathering of free species, she thought about how it all began. A small blue planet threatened with extinction had become the catalyst for galactic liberation. "Admiral," Captain Taylor said, "what's our next mission?" Carter smiled as she looked at the star charts showing hundreds of green markers, free worlds where the Empire's red flags no longer flew. "Exploration," she said. "We've got a whole galaxy to explore as free beings. And who knows what oath